before COVID, West Pelzer was really excited about 2020. We had set the stage for a lot of summer and fall events that would carry us on into the new decade. So we started in February with our retreat of council. And so as part of that, we did a strategic plan where we looked at short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals. And we started talking about the long-term goals of a new public works facility or a new park on the west end of town. And even short-term goals talking about just how do we communicate better, how do we strategize for our budget workshops and retreats with department heads. So we started to think about a lot of things that we could do immediately, but we had started to set the stage for what some of those long-term goals would be. And then, as you know, ultimately COVID allowed us to take a chance to regroup and maybe rethink about the way that government was operating for our citizens and things that we could do better.
What were some of the major projects planned for this year? You mentioned a couple things there, and then how were they impacted?
Yep. So we had set the stage for the development of what we called putting clothes on the mannequin. We've done a really good job the past four years of building a framework and a fabric in town of new businesses, new events, new festivals. And so we were looking to put clothes on that. We were looking to start planting trees in town, to do a lot more beautification in our park, kind of dressing it as we would say. Long-term goals that we were already thinking about was how do we start to get that lease on that property that's maybe next to the river, so that we could say that we have the Saluda River in our backyard as well. And again, a lot of those things got put on hold, but they're still on our strategic plan board. They're still part of our budget that we passed, and we'll revisit that in January of 21.
How is economic development going in West Pelzer?
So economic development during COVID or the pandemic didn't seem to stop. Now, while we had local businesses that did have a lot of downturn in their business or a decrease in revenue, what we saw was the community coming together. And so while on a Saturday or Sunday you would typically go to a downtown Greenville or a downtown Anderson to eat dinner, we saw a lot more people staying local. We saw a lot more people walking the sidewalks. And so we've been fortunate that the majority of our businesses have been able to stay open, have been able to stay afloat. We did have one closure, but where one door closes, another door opens. And so during the pandemic, we were excited to announce that Arnold's and Besto would be combining to come to West Pelzer on Main Street and fill that void. So while economic development may have seemed to stop, it was just a pause and a deep breath looking forward to 2021.
And one of your goals has always been to build a walking small town. Where would you say you are on that spectrum?
Yeah, so there's a lot of projects that came to life during the pandemic, and one of them was the walkability, the connectivity of West Pelzer, not only to Pelzer and Williamston, but to the broader region. And so for the first time, as my term as mayor, we had people calling, letting us know that sidewalks were broken, or that the ADA ramp wasn't truly accessible, or the crosswalk wasn't visible enough. So we had more people out walking in our town than we had ever seen before. And so we started really digging into the big idea of how do we connect to other communities. And so I'm confident in the future that you'll see resolutions passed from West Pelzer, Pelzer, and Williamston that we're ready to partner on a connection that would tie the three towns together, that would connect to our central point, which is Palmetto Middle, Palmetto High School. From there, I think that it's endless where we could go. With connectivity, I'd love to see a greenway that would connect over to Piedmont and the river along the Saluda River. I think there's about 17 or 18 property owners that it could take to make it happen. I always think about what a legacy project would be as mayor, and if I had my wishes, that would be one of those legacy projects that I could say started during a pandemic.
And you mentioned the other towns. Has cooperation been good among Pelzer and Williamston and West Pelzer?
Yep. Cooperation has always been great amongst the three communities. The mayors continually talk to each other. I think where COVID kind of, or the pandemic really played into our benefit was that we were forced to communicate better. So it was not just collaborating and talking about things, but when you have multiple staff that are out because of potential exposures, it forced us to communicate. It forced us to share resources and maybe talk a little more. And I'm confident that with the mayor Mayor-elect Burgess in Williamston, new Mayor Ragland in Pelzer, and myself, that we'll be able to continue that communication and continue that collaboration. I've joked with both of them that I'm the elder of the Tri-City area now, albeit at 38.
Well, how about the county? Has the county been cooperative and supportive of what's going on with y'all during this time?
The county has been more than supportive, both pre-pandemic, during pandemic, and hopefully post-pandemic. Have had nothing but rave reviews of our emergency services department and Mr. Baker and how he relays the information to us as far as what the current counts are, but also where testing would be held at. He's been great, or the county has been great in being able to give us resources for how we should handle the transparency of what can we tell the community, what do we need to make sure that we understand better before we release numbers or before we talk about specifics. The county's also been helpful when we start to look at say police officers that end up having to be out because they've been potentially exposed to a positive case. They've sent extra patrols over. County Public Works has sent extra people over to help with some of our just simple work orders. And so they have been an absolute blessing.
If the vaccine rolls out as planned and things start looking better, what you got looking down the road in 2021? You mentioned some things. What are you looking for this coming year?
2021 will definitely be, or what will feel like a rebirth for West Pelzer. We were becoming known as a community that was, some had called artsy, that you never know what West Pelzer is going to do next with a festival or an event. And so we were really bummed that we didn't get to have, say, Dog Days of Summer or the adult Easter egg hunt where we passed out, fishing rods and bottles of wine and coffee to those that found the giant eggs in town. We were really looking forward to those sort of things. And we really hoped that in 2020 that kind of the pandemic would be over so that we could kind of end the year on a really cool Christmas parade and beard and biceps and kind of bring that back. We weren't fortunate to be able to do so, but we're already planning for what 2021 could be. And so in 2021, I think you'll see us rebirth some of those great things that you had seen in the past, but I think you're going to see a stronger community. And so what we witnessed during the parade was a community that came together, probably the longest parade in history, probably the most people that had ever attended a parade. And so they're thriving for that engagement. And so in 2021, you'll see more community events, but I think you'll see more community involvement and folks that want to volunteer. One of the things I have strived to do as part of my tenure as mayor is make sure that this is not the Mayor Sanders show, that this is a community-led event that's attended by the community, that's put on by the community. And so, again, I hope there's some more volunteers that come out in 2021 that can make these events possible. Town Hall. One of the things that happened during the pandemic when we were first forced to close, Paula and I sat down, Paula, our town administrator, and I sat down and we started talking about how can we make sure that government operates more efficiently during the pandemic, but that we also are transparent with the public so that we can communicate what it will look like post-pandemic. And so we sat down and spent a lot of time talking about security up front with our billing and permit clerks. What does it look like for having additional cameras out, having additional officers in the building at any given time? And frankly, how we do online portals for town. And so now almost everything that you would once do inside of the building, you can now do online. And for a town of 882 people, that's a pretty big deal that we were able to do so. I should also compliment Representative Thayer, Senator Gambrell, and Representative Cox. They were outstanding in kind of telling us what was happening at the state level with some of the governor's executive orders of how they would impact us and what we could be looking forward to coming down the road. So they were instrumental in us working with CARES funding for what we could do as far as just sanitizing stations, thermometers of folks walking into the building, how courts were being run in larger cities and how our court system would need to work. I think a lot of those things post-pandemic will likely not change for local government. You'll still be able to do everything online. We're still going to protect ourselves with plastic barricades in front of our billing clerks just for safety and security reasons. And then also the cameras, being able to know who's coming in and out of the building, and if there's a potential positive, or maybe next year it's just a potential flu case, but nonetheless we'd like to know who's coming in and out at all times. Kind of maybe not part of that as well, but being able to take a deep breath is sometimes a really good thing for local governments to be able to do. And I think that our economy was such pre-pandemic that we were all just running. And I don't think we knew where the finish line was at. We were all just chasing a prize, whether it was a new business or a new housing development. And I think COVID kind of forced a lot of elected officials to sit down and take a breath and start to reflect on what they had previously accomplished and what race they were actually running. And I'm a prime example of COVID anxiety, COVID depression. Those things are real. I've been a part of that. I have been through that. But the pandemic really forced me as a mayor to take a deep breath and kind of start to think about what that legacy needed to be, what the policies need to look like for an efficient government, and what happens if I weren't mayor. What happens if Mayor Sanders unfortunately passes away tomorrow? What does the town look like, and have I done the right job and not just chased a prize that I didn't know what the prize was? And so I'm frankly thankful that we were kind of forced to take a deep breath. I think Mayor Roberts, Mayor Crenshaw, Mayor Durham, Mayor Ragland, I think they would all agree, Mayor Gentry, I think they would all agree that we will be stronger as a county and we will be stronger as a municipality because of what we've been through the past 9 months.